Welcome to the Wife Stories YouTube channel. New video every day, and don't forget to subscribe. Here we go.
I do not owe you an explanation. That was what she said the night I finally summoned the courage to question her directly. She was standing in the hallway, our daughter's jacket half draped over her arm, her hair pinned in a low twist, the way she used to do years ago, in more carefree times. I remember how she wouldn't even turn to look at me. It felt like a spear going through my chest. Sharp, sudden, impossible to ignore. I'm writing these words as if I'm addressing them to her. Perhaps I am. Maybe I need some semblance of finality, a structured space where my thoughts can live. You see, it began long before that night in the hallway. Months, at least. Subtle changes in our routines, in her smell, in the cadence of our evenings together. I wish it were simpler, something I could name or pin down. But it slid in quietly, day by day, the way an evening shadow creeps across a living room floor. She told me once, a long time ago, trust is the easiest gift to lose. Those were her exact words. Now I hear them echo in my mind, each time I catch a glimpse of her phone screen angled away from me, or sense the hush that falls whenever she steps into another room to answer a text. I can't help thinking, you taught me that phrase, so do not be surprised I repeat it now. Back to you, asking for an explanation you no longer care to give. My name is Joseph Henderson, but no one calls me Joseph anymore. Joe or Hey Dad, or Mr. Henderson. At the distribution center. I'm 50 years old, average height, a bit of extra weight around the middle from too many takeouts and late nights, though I still jog once in a while. I used to think 50 was old. Now I think 50's the time you realize how precarious everything truly is. In the days before the truth broke, there was a sense that everyone around me knew something big was coming. My daughter said, "Dad, just wait, you'll see," referencing a birthday surprise that had apparently been orchestrated behind my back. My neighbor showed up with a carrot cake. "You'll want to save your appetite," he hinted. Then my wife, the woman I'd known for almost 3 decades, teased me at dinner. "Something big is coming. You just have to be patient." It was all so consistent, all so suspicious in its consistency. I told myself, Joe, maybe they're planning a party. Maybe they want you to be in the dark, so it'll feel more special. But I had this gnawing feeling in my stomach, a dull, persistent ache. The first sign was small. 2 toothbrushes in our shower. We only needed one in there. Mine sits in the sink caddy. "Oh," she said lightly when I asked. I used an extra one to scrub the tiles. Not once in my life had I seen her scour mildew with a pink Oral-B, but I let it pass. The second sign was the wine. She and I liked a glass of Pinot on Saturday nights, maybe after a tough day. But the bottles were disappearing faster. I didn't remember us finishing them all. Once, I found the recycling bin loaded with empties when I'd only had 1 or 2 glasses all week. Then came Netflix. She never used to watch TV alone, always reading her magazines or browsing social media, so I was surprised to see a new profile show up under our account. Teddy. A silly name, but something about it made my skin prickle. I confronted her, in a gentle way. "You made a new profile on Netflix." She only shrugged. "Just so the recommendations don't mix up," she said. "I don't owe you an explanation." She'd repeat whenever my curiosity crawled an inch too far. The same line, always a little sharper, a bit more final. Those words stung me so much because they carried a coldness I'd never heard in her voice before. And yet, I convinced myself I had to remain calm, to gather proof. So I said nothing, bided my time, felt the dull ache in my shoulders intensify with each passing day. That's how it was for weeks. The minute details stung and added up. The extra glass in the sink some mornings, the scent of cologne that wasn't mine, how she'd sometimes close her phone mid-text when I entered the room. My body responded to that tension like an old car stuttering in cold weather. My knees ached, my back spasmed. I lost sleep. 50 years. You think you know your own flesh and blood after that many decades on Earth. Then, on the day of my birthday, a day I was dreading instead of celebrating. I found confirmation. Teddy's name on her open laptop. He'd left some playful comment on a streaming watch list. Teddy's next clue. She'd saved it in a minimized window, not expecting me to come around the corner. The moment I saw it, the temperature in my body plummeted, and I felt that twist of rage in my gut. But I forced myself not to blow up. Instead, I turned my face away, pretending I hadn't noticed, because a plan had already begun forming in my mind. For the record, I did not want to humiliate her. I did not want a spectacle, but she once told me, "If you feel cornered, always find a new door." That phrase again, her words lodged in my memory, coming back at the strangest times. I decided to create that door. An opportunity for her to show me who she really was, on neutral ground, far from the neighbors and our daughter. That's how the idea of the lake house was born. We had a place near Lake Monroe, a quiet cabin we bought many years ago, when we were newly married, bright-eyed dreamers who believed in fresh starts. We'd spent a blissful summer there after our daughter was born. We even carved our initials on the big pine outside. I told my wife we should revisit it for old time's sake. "Just you and me," I said, "like the old days. Let's celebrate my 50th properly. Let's bring that black dress you wore on our first anniversary, the one you said always made you feel so alive." She looked at me, and for a brief moment, her face softened. Or maybe I imagined that softness because I wanted to see some remnant of the woman I fell in love with. "All right," she agreed. "We'll go. It'll be fun." Fun. She had no idea what I was planning. We arrived a few days later, the sky overcast, the air thick with the smell of pine needles and lake water. I carried our bags inside, led her to the upstairs bedroom with its broad window overlooking the water. The day was still, hushed, almost dreamlike. She hung that black dress in the tiny closet, parted the curtains to let in a slice of pale light. The floorboards creaked under each step. My shoulders tense from that familiar ache I've carried around for weeks, but my voice was steady when I told her, "I'm going to the store for supplies. I'll be back in an hour." Then I left, or at least I pretended to. In reality, I circled back. I crept quietly into the house through the side door, slipping off my shoes to avoid any noise. My heart hammered in my chest so loudly it was difficult to hear anything else. I made my way to the bedroom closet, where I'd placed a small camera. I sat in the darkness behind a half-open door, the old wood pressing against my back, listening. For a long while, I heard only silence. I wondered if I'd miscalculated. But then came the sound of a car door closing outside, footsteps on the porch, the gentle squeak of that ancient screen door. And there he was, Teddy. He said something in a low voice, something flirtatious that made her giggle. "I left it unlocked," she answered. "Just for you." I'd never heard her speak like that. It was playful, intimate, and the sound of it caused a cramp in my calf, as though my own body protested the betrayal. She was guiding him further inside. There was a shuffle and a click of heels on the floor. My wife, my partner for nearly 3 decades, leading this younger man toward the bed we'd once shared. For an instant, I thought, maybe I can't go through with this. But then my chest flared with a fierce, raw ache, the kind of hurt that demands confrontation, that begs to be known. She wore the black dress I'd asked her to bring. I saw her slip it off her shoulders, letting it pool on the floor in a swirl of dark fabric. She leaned against him. He was tall, well-built, with a confident stance that made my blood run hot with rage. The camera was perched at an angle that caught most of the bed. I could see how she put her hands on him, how he slid his fingers into her hair. The images blurred for me, tinted with a red haze of fury and heartbreak. Their voices were hushed, urgent. I can still recall that distinct hush in her tone, the half-laugh, half-sigh of someone who's free, or believes herself free. My pulse throbbed in my ears. I had wanted proof, and now I had it in the worst possible way. Vivid, inescapable, searing itself into my brain. I hated that part of me that was physically responding to the tension, my fists clenching, my breath quickening, my heart pounding so brutally that I pressed a hand against my ribs to steady it. The pain in my chest was no longer mild or dull. It was acute, crawling along my spine and into my shoulders, making me grimace in the darkness. But I forced myself to keep still. When they sank onto the bed, their breathing grew heavier. There was an erotic charge in the room, a sultry undercurrent that made my stomach churn. I watched as he trailed kisses along her neck, the way she arched under his touch. I saw enough to be certain, beyond any doubt, of what was happening. She moaned his name in that breathy way I remembered from younger, happier days, except now it was for him. Teddy, a name she had never once uttered in front of me. I felt something rupture inside my head, a final strand of denial snapping. Yet I told myself, wait for the moment. Let them see, let them realize there's an audience, let them know who's directing this scene. So I flipped the switch. With one trembling hand, I reached out of the closet and hit the lamp button. Light flooded the space, stark and unforgiving, illuminating their tangled figures. They froze. She looked up, eyes widening. She let out a gasp, nearly toppling off the edge of the bed. Teddy scrambled for his shoes, clearly in shock, and I stepped out of the closet, letting them see the camera perched discreetly on a shelf. "What, Joe?" she stammered, pulling the sheets around her. Teddy gaped, speechless, trying to reach for his pants on the floor. But I didn't move. I stood there, feeling the trembling ache in every joint, in every muscle, yet I forced a quiet steadiness into my voice. I said, "You told me once, trust is the easiest gift to lose. Remember that." I let those words hang in the air. I wasn't shouting. My voice was low, but it trembled. The emotion spilled over in the quaver of my tone, and I felt the tension strain my throat, as if I might cry or burst. Still, I did not allow a single tear. She stared at me. "Joe, She wanted to say something, but Teddy got there first. "Man, look, I didn't mean." He stuttered, grabbing his shirt. He had the nerve to speak to me like we could make sense of this in some rational conversation. I told him, "There's the door, Teddy. It's unlocked. I left it unlocked just for you." And the echo of her words stabbed me once more. The same lines she'd whispered to him in that hush. Now I spat them back, letting him know he had no place here. He was part of an ugly secret I forced into the light. He eyed the camera, flinched, and then decided the fastest route to salvage his pride was to gather his clothes and flee. I watched him scramble, yanking on his pants in a frantic hurry. My wife, clutched the sheet to her chest and turned her face away, almost like she didn't want me to see that raw shame in her eyes. She had tears forming, but I couldn't tell if they were tears of regret, guilt, or anger at being caught. Teddy got out. He slammed the door behind him, leaving her and me in that suffocating silence. The smell of them hung in the air like a toxic perfume. I felt a wave of nausea, a swirl of heartbreak, and fury twisting inside my gut so violently that I had to press a fist to my abdomen. She tried to speak, but I held up my hand to stop her. I needed space. I needed time to let the reality set in. I walked over to the window, looking out at the lake. The water was still, an uncanny mirror that reflected the darkening sky. She whispered, "Joe, this isn't what it looks like." Then she paused, realizing the futility of that phrase. There was no rationalizing away the fact that she'd let a younger man into our bed, into our space. "I'm sorry," she finally managed. I turned around. "You said, I do not owe you an explanation. Are you still clinging to that? Or have you changed your mind?" My voice shook. I could feel sweat collecting along my hairline. My heart felt like it was about to tear itself free of my chest. She bowed her head, tears slipping from her eyes. I didn't know how to talk to you. I felt alone. You were always so distant, so wrapped up in your own world. I met him, and it just happened. I was going to tell you, eventually. But what? Were you hoping it'd all just conveniently fade away? Did you think we could go on like nothing happened? My throat burned with every word. All those times you told me about trust, honesty, commitment. What am I supposed to do with that now? She tried to stand, but the sheet tangled around her legs, forcing her to stay on the bed. That bed was unmade, pillows scattered. The image tore at me. I thought about our vow renewal on our 20th anniversary, how we'd gone to that same little chapel in town, how she'd said, "I will love you until my last breath." So easily undone. My lungs felt tight. I had to force air in and out, remind myself to breathe. In a calmer voice, barely above a whisper, I said, "We can talk later. Right now, I need you to get dressed. I have something else I need to do." It was enough for that moment. I stepped out, left her to gather her clothes, left her to figure out how to stand upright when her secrets had been stripped bare. I was burning with the urge to leave the cabin, to roar down the highway, to put as many miles between us as I could. But a deeper part of me insisted that running away wasn't the answer. Instead, I walked down to the lake, letting the crisp air fill my lungs, letting that old pine tree remind me of the boy I once was. When we first bought this place, I had carved J+R on the bark. The lines were still there, though faded, half grown over with new wood. That gave me a moment of surreal dissonance. How something once so clearly etched could be gradually erased by time, by life's slow creep. But I didn't let my nostalgia linger too long. I needed to complete what I'd set in motion. The camera was still upstairs, capturing everything we'd said. I had the footage saved to my laptop, too. I hated the thought of using it like a weapon, but I felt a savage sense of anger, an impulse for retribution. I was so tired of being the oblivious husband, the gullible father, the man who let love turn him blind. I went back inside. She was dressed now, pacing near the bed with her arms folded. Her eyes were red, and she opened her mouth to speak, but I shook my head. "I'm not leaving," I said firmly. "You might think I'd walk out, but I'm staying right here, for our daughter, for the family I thought we had." She exhaled a shaky breath, pressing her palms to her temples. "Joe, we need to talk about this." I cut in. "We will. But I want you to understand something first. You once told me, if you feel cornered, find a new door. Well, I found it. This is me stepping through that door, unveiling what was hidden." I looked at the camera, then at her. "I have everything I need to show them who you really are. I want them to see the side you've kept secret. Your mother, your friends, our daughter. They have a right to know." Her face blanched, horror flooding her expression. "Please, Joe, don't do that. Don't punish her. Our daughter doesn't deserve to see something so ugly. She's still young. She's in college," I said, my voice shaking again. "She's old enough to understand reality, not the lies we fed her. Joe." She stepped toward me, a spark of old tenderness flickering in her eyes. "I know I've done something unforgivable. I can't take it back. But does it really help to expose it to everyone? Will that fix anything?" "It might not fix us," I said, "but it'll stop me from living with this sense of shame, like I'm the one who's failed. Because we both know I've made mistakes in our marriage. Lack of attention. So many missed cues. So many times I chose work over you. But I never turned my back on our vows. I never brought someone else into our bed." She sank onto the edge of the mattress, burying her face in her hands. "I can't argue," she mumbled. "I can't defend it." I felt a renewed wave of physical pain, a stabbing heat in my chest. My breathing wavered. I pressed my hands to my thighs to ground myself. "I have to show them," I repeated softly, though each word tasted bitter on my tongue. "I have to let them see the truth." She looked up, tears sliding over her cheeks. You still love me, Joe?" Her voice wobbled, uncertain, and it cracked my heart further to hear that vulnerability. She had told me once that I never said the words "I love you" anymore, that I took her for granted. Part of me wanted to shout, "I do love you," even after this, even after everything. But the ache was too strong, the betrayal too fresh, so I didn't respond. I walked out of that room, carrying the camera, and headed downstairs. My knees felt weak on the steps. Each creak of the old wood was a reminder of how time ages everything, but doesn't always strengthen it. I sat at the old wooden table in the living room, the laptop in front of me. She came down, lingering by the doorway, eyes tracing my every move. "Are you planning to send it to them?" she asked in a small voice. "To our daughter. To my mother." I ran a hand over my face, trying to dull the pounding in my temples. "No," I replied slowly. "First, I'll show it to you, because you need to see yourself the way I see you now." I turned the screen around so she could see the feed from the camera. A part of me felt like a monster, forcing her to watch her own betrayal. But I needed to make it undeniable, needed her to confront the real cost of what she'd done. The video flickered, showing her silhouette in that black dress. Teddy's form leaning in, the hush of their first kisses. She winced, covering her mouth with her hands. But she didn't look away. In that moment, I recalled a conversation we'd had years before, in that same cabin. We'd been celebrating our 10th anniversary, and she wore a summer dress dotted with tiny flowers. I'd asked, "What's your biggest fear?" She answered, "For you to see the worst in me and no longer love me." The memory struck me like a hammer to the chest. Here we were, no illusions left, her worst side playing out on a screen less than a foot away. I paused the footage after a minute, unable to continue. My stomach felt like it was twisting in knots. She was trembling, tears staining her cheeks. I closed the laptop. "That's enough," I whispered. "What are you going to do with it?" She asked hoarsely, her gaze flicking to the camera. "Keep it. For now," I said. "Then, when the time is right, I'll decide. But this is my proof. Proof that I'm not the one who destroyed our life together." She nodded, her whole body shaking. "I don't know what to say. I'm sorry. I don't know if it means anything now. But I am. And I'm terrified of losing you." I stood up. She flinched as if expecting me to lash out, maybe throw something or storm away. But I walked past her, just brushed the back of my hand over the wall for balance. My heart was hammering so violently that my vision dotted with black. My chest ached as though knives were lodged in my ribs. I had this desperate craving for fresh air. Outside, the evening had deepened to a dusky purple. The shoreline was quiet, and a thin wind skimmed across the water. I listened to the gentle lap of waves against the dock, struggling to calm the swirl of rage and heartbreak. Inside, she was alone. I left her there, uncertain if she would remain or follow me. I found myself thinking of my daughter, the day she was born. My wife's laughter, the tears of pure joy in the hospital room. We were so young, so certain of forever. And I still felt that paternal protectiveness. Toward my daughter, yes, but in a strange way, also toward the woman who had just betrayed me. Because deep down, I still loved her. Even as the betrayal burned in my throat, even as the memory of that scene in the bedroom replayed in my mind, I couldn't erase the years we'd shared. I heard her voice from the first day we moved into this cabin. "Let's never leave each other alone." Now, ironically, we stood on opposite sides of a chasm I didn't know how to bridge. I returned indoors. She hadn't moved from the living room. She was staring at the laptop, which remained closed. Her back was to me. Her posture was slumped, arms crossed over her chest. She looked over her shoulder when I came in, her eyes bloodshot, makeup streaked from crying. Her body language told me everything. Guilt, sorrow, maybe the faintest flicker of hope that we could talk. I said nothing at first. I sat in the armchair near the cold fireplace, rubbing the back of my neck, where tension had built up like a tight coil. Slowly, deliberately, I looked her in the eyes. "Why him?" I asked quietly. She winced. "It wasn't about him," she murmured. "It was about me, about feeling alive again. He's younger. He's got this energy, this spark. I felt wanted." She broke off. a single tear tracking down her face, but it doesn't excuse anything. I don't know how to ask you to forgive me. I pressed my fingers into the armrests, half expecting them to crack under the pressure. My voice was low and measured when I replied, I can't forgive yet. Maybe I never will. You said you felt alone. Did it ever cross your mind to talk to me? To say, Joe, I'm hurting. We're drifting. She nodded, tears dripping onto her dress. I tried dropping hints. You were so busy, so distant. After your promotion, after we sent our daughter off to college, there was a wall between us. I know that doesn't justify anything. It's just what happened. You destroyed us for a rush. I said, each word pinning her in place. And now, there's a camera that shows exactly how you did it. I can't promise I won't use that footage. I don't want to be cruel, but I am angry. More than angry. I'm heartbroken. I'm humiliated. And yes, if I have to show it to prove my side of things, I will. She started to speak, but I raised a hand. Do you remember the first night we slept in this cabin? You woke up before sunrise. We snuck out to the dock, and we shared a blanket because it was freezing. We watched the sky go from black to pink, the loons calling across the lake. You said, I love you more than anything. That was real, wasn't it? She swallowed, staring at me. It was. It was real. Then how did we get here? My voice cracked, and I hated the vulnerability in that moment, but it was unstoppable. My shoulders tensed again, that wave of physical pain flaring along my spine. It was as if my body was punishing me for asking. How do 30 years vanish so quickly? She didn't answer, and for a long moment, we simply existed in that suffocating silence. Then I stood up, my breath ragged. I'm going to sleep in the guest room. In the morning, we'll drive back, and I'll decide what comes next. Her lip trembled. I know I have no right to ask anything of you, but please, let's talk before you do anything irreversible. Our daughter, let's not break her world more than we have to. I couldn't even look at her. I felt anger, sadness, and an odd pity swirling in me. I loved her. That was the tragedy of it. I still loved her, but the betrayal was scorching my insides like acid. I forced my feet to move, to ascend the narrow stairway. Each step felt heavier than the last. I heard her faint sob behind me, but I kept going. In the guest room, I collapsed onto a creaking twin bed. Darkness settled around me, and I stared at the ceiling, feeling every muscle ache. My heart hammered in my ears, refusing to let me find sleep. 1,000 memories swirled. Her face on our wedding day, her laugh when we first danced at the reception, the letters we exchanged while I was away on business trips. And now Teddy, this younger man with a confident smirk. The way she'd said his name in that hush. The black dress sliding off her shoulders. My chest tightened, forcing a harsh gasp from my lungs. I let a tear slip onto the pillow. Just one. A reminder that I was still human. Then I took a steadying breath, locked it all away, and forced my exhausted eyes to close. Morning came with the sound of soft knocking on the door. I groaned, rolling over, my body stiff as though I'd slept on nails. Pain flared in my back, a reflection of the mental anguish. She stood on the threshold, that black dress replaced by a sweater and jeans, her eyes swollen from crying. She extended a mug of coffee in a trembling hand. I didn't speak. I took it from her, sipped it quietly. The coffee was lukewarm, but it was enough to nudge me into wakefulness. After a moment, she cleared her throat. I'll pack our things. Unless you want me to go alone. I met her gaze. The words felt like sandpaper in my mouth, but I said them anyway. No, we'll leave together. This was always going to be the last act of our marriage in this place. I tested that phrase. Last act. A part of me balked, but I couldn't see a path forward just yet. She nodded, vanishing from the doorway to gather her belongings. By the time we locked the cabin and loaded the trunk, the tension was so thick you could have cut it with a blade. We drove in near silence down the winding lakeside roads, past the pines that once symbolized a fresh start. I kept glancing at her reflection in the rearview mirror, noticing how she stared at her hands, occasionally wiping away tears. When we finally reached home, we found the leftover carrot cake from our neighbor still on the counter, untouched. It looked forlorn, an unwelcome reminder of what was supposed to be a celebratory moment. My stomach churned. I felt an immediate urge to put the laptop somewhere safe, to preserve my proof, though a part of me hated the idea of watching that scene again. We spent the rest of the afternoon in separate corners of the house. I felt like a ghost, drifting from room to room, not sure where I belonged. The physical ache in my chest spiked whenever I thought about Teddy, about the camera, about the black dress. By evening, I was exhausted from fighting my own thoughts. She emerged from the bedroom, hair tied back in a shaky attempt at normalcy, as if a ponytail could hide what we both knew. "Joe," she said quietly, "we have to tell our daughter something. She'll be home this weekend. Are we going to act like everything is normal?" I inhaled, bracing my shoulders. "No. We'll talk to her. But first, you and I need to figure out if there's anything left to salvage." My voice was raw with emotion. I might still show her what I recorded, though I hate the thought of scarring her with it. I don't want to ambush her with a video of you and that man, but I can't pretend it didn't happen. My wife pressed her lips together, tears in her eyes. "I understand," she whispered. "I won't fight you on it. It's your right." Then, as she turned to leave, she hesitated, glancing back. "I still love you, Joe." I never stopped. I nodded vaguely, unable to answer. My entire body felt like it was caving in. I ended up sleeping on the living room couch that night. My dreams were fitful, full of images of Teddy's silhouette, the face of my wife shifting from the young woman I married to the stranger I'd seen at the cabin. Once I startled awake, heart pounding so hard I had to press a hand to my rib cage. The next day, my neighbor knocked on the door, asking me about that big surprise they'd been so sure everyone was planning. I told him quietly, "Change of plans. Thanks for the cake." And I shut the door. I wasn't in the mood for small talk, not with that storm raging in my head. When our daughter arrived Saturday morning, the tension inside the house was palpable. She picked up on it immediately. She was observant like me. "Dad, Mom, what's going on?" she asked, dropping her duffel bag on the living room floor. Our daughter was used to seeing us as a stable unit, the example for everything. Now we were brittle, fractured. I looked at my wife, then at our daughter, who was 19, bright, and all grown in ways that still surprised me. My wife's hands shook, so I cleared my throat and spoke first. "There's something you need to know. Your mother and we're going through a crisis." My chest felt as if a vice was tightening around it. She's been involved with someone else." My daughter's eyes widened, searching both our faces. "Mom," she whispered, heartbreak in her tone. "Is that true?" My wife couldn't speak. Tears streamed down her cheeks as she nodded. "Yes. I'm sorry. I made a terrible mistake." She tried to reach for our daughter, but the girl pulled away, stunned. That was when I considered the laptop, the camera, the evidence. I had planned to show it to them both, to remove any shadow of doubt and exonerate myself in one harsh stroke. But something in my daughter's face made me pause. She looked devastated, raw, uncertain. She stared at her mother like a stranger. I felt a lurch in my gut. Was I really going to push that blade deeper? I caught my wife's eyes across the room. She wore that same expression I'd seen the night we returned from the cabin. Pleading, regretful, quietly desperate. I heard a faint echo in my head of that old vow. "I love you more than anything." The vow we both had once believed so deeply. Then I imagined the effect that graphic footage would have on our daughter. The humiliation for my wife. The scaring for the girl who still saw her mother as a role model. I swallowed. My heart hammered. My voice came out rough. "I have proof. I was going to show you. I know I don't deserve forgiveness, But I'll try to make it right, if you'll let me. It tore me apart to see her like that. My chest felt on the verge of collapsing. I turned away, pressing my hand to my sternum to ease the radiating pain. This is too much for one morning, I finally managed. I looked at our daughter. Give me some time to breathe. Let's not make any permanent decisions today. She nodded, tears still in her eyes. I understand. She moved to the stairway, but paused halfway up. Whatever happens, I'm here. For both of you. And then she went to her room, leaving my wife and me alone in the living room again. I could practically hear the thunder of blood rushing through my ears. She stepped closer, her voice unsteady. Joe, if you want me gone, say the word. I didn't answer right away. I stared at our wedding photo on the mantel. 2 kids, beaming with hope and promise. Then I turned to face her. Do you remember telling me, back at the start, that we should never let resentment take root? My voice was close to breaking. Well, it has. It's a giant weed choking me from the inside out. It's strangling everything I believed in. Her hands trembled. I know. And I planted that weed. I looked into her tear-streaked face. I felt so much heartbreak that I thought I might collapse under its weight. But I also felt love. An attachment built over so many years. That's when I let out a long, quivering breath. Yes, you did. And now it's on me to decide if I can forgive you, or if I'd only be punishing us both by trying. She closed her eyes, tears clinging to her lashes. I'll respect whatever you decide, she said softly. Respect, I repeated, almost spitting the word. It's a bit late for that, don't you think? She nodded, accepting the sting of my words. Then she took a few steps back, giving me space. Take all the time you need. I'm not going anywhere. She walked to the kitchen, leaving me alone to wrestle with myself in silence. I didn't move for a while. My knees felt weak, and I sank onto the couch. Memories trailed through my mind. Her laughter on that bright day we planted the apple tree in our yard. Her look of astonishment when I proposed. The tears we shared after my father's funeral. My entire adult life was intertwined with this woman. And yet, the image of her with Teddy was burned into my eyes. The rawness, the betrayal, the way her body welcomed him. I covered my face with my hands, stifling a groan as the physical pain clamped my ribs like a vice again. I couldn't remain in limbo forever. Something in me was drawn to that laptop, to the camera, to the proof. If I truly wanted revenge, I could show that footage to everyone. Her mother, her friends, the entire family. Destroy her reputation. But I wondered, would that free me? Or would it poison me further? Because inside me still lived the memory of the woman I loved, the mother of my child, the partner who had once pledged never to let go. I realized that some part of me, however buried, was crying out to salvage what we could. So I made a decision. That night, after everyone went to bed, I retrieved the camera from the bag and took it outside. The autumn wind nipped at my skin as I walked to the metal fire pit in our backyard. I placed the camera on the ground, next to a small stack of kindling I'd gathered. Then I opened it, removed the memory card, and stared at it under the glow of a porch light. A tiny piece of plastic containing the worst betrayal of my life. I wanted to snap it in two, but something made me hesitate. My hand shook. Eventually, I fished out my lighter. I set the card on the metal rim of the fire pit and flicked the lighter's flame. I stared at it for a long, uneasy moment, the pale flicker illuminating my trembling fingers. Then, in a single motion, I fed the card to the flame, leaving it to melt and curl into unrecognizable lumps of black. The odor was acrid, but the act brought me a faint sense of release. I turned the lighter off, letting the darkness swallow the embers. For a second, I just stood there, feeling the cold air against my skin. It was done. The footage was gone. I could have kept it, used it like a weapon, but in the end, I realized that humiliating her wouldn't mend my heart. I wanted to find a path forward, be it reconciliation or a clean break. When I turned around, I found her standing on the porch, arms wrapped around herself against the chill. She must have seen the fire. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then she descended the porch steps, meeting me in the yard. "Joe, did you?" I nodded, letting out a shaky breath. "I destroyed it." She closed her eyes, tears slipping free. "Thank you," she whispered. "I don't deserve that mercy, but thank you." "Don't thank me," I replied in a voice I hardly recognized, hoarse with exhaustion. "This isn't about you, it's about me. I can't live with that poison inside me. I can't hold on to that forever." She nodded, wiping at her cheeks. We stood there under the faint moonlight, the echoes of who we once were stirring in the shadows. I felt the ache in my bones, the weight of my age, the pain in my chest that had intensified over these weeks. A question hung in the air. Where do we go from here? She looked at me, voice trembling. Are we? Can we try? I knew what she meant. Could we try to repair it? Could we sift through the ruins and find something worth saving? I rubbed my temples, feeling the sting of tears behind my own eyes. "I don't know if I'm strong enough," I admitted, "but maybe. You once told me, a marriage is more than a single chapter. So if we have more chapters left to write, they'll have to be built on brutal honesty. No more secrets, no more illusions." She reached out, gently placing a hand on my arm. "I promise," she whispered, tears on her lashes. "I swear it." My voice was a ragged hush as I replied, "Swear it to yourself too. Because if you break that promise again, there's no second chance." She nodded vigorously, tears slipping over her cheeks. The cold wind rattled the bare branches overhead, a reminder of how seasons change, how everything in life evolves or decays. As we walked back inside, I felt a flicker of something in my chest that wasn't pure pain. Maybe it was hope, maybe it was simple fatigue, but it was better than the raw torment of the past days. The following morning, I was up early, unable to sleep, pacing in the kitchen with a mug of coffee. My wife came downstairs, hesitant, as if she were stepping into uncertain territory. I looked at her, thinking how she once was the center of my world. Part of me resented that I still loved her. Part of me felt relief that I could still feel something at all, rather than numb rage. We talked in halting sentences, acknowledging the massive gulf between us. She confessed more details than I wanted to hear. How she'd met Teddy online through some freelance work, how it escalated into flirty messages, until eventually they met in person. She tearfully assured me she'd already ended it. Whether I believed her or not, I wasn't certain. But I listened, my hands shaking. The entire time, my body throbbed with exhaustion and that persistent ache in my chest. When our daughter woke up, the three of us sat down and discussed the bare facts, without the gruesome details. We explained that we were going to try marriage counseling, that we both realized we'd let distance and resentment build up for years. Our daughter looked relieved, though still shaken. She asked me, "Dad, can you really forgive Mom?" I didn't lie. I said, "I'm not sure, but I want to see if we can heal." She nodded, tears bright in her eyes. I hope so. The days that followed were tense. My wife and I moved like uneasy roommates, careful around each other, uncertain how to act. Sometimes I'd catch her looking at me with such guilt that I'd have to walk away, or the memories would stab me all over again. My nights were restless. I'd lie awake thinking about Teddy, about that black dress, about the panic on their faces when I flipped on the light. Sometimes I felt the urge to confront him physically, to let my fists convey the pain in my chest. But I realized it wouldn't change the fundamental truth. Her betrayal was a wound only we could attempt to heal or choose to let fester. Gradually, my body's pain lessened. It didn't vanish, but it receded from a sharp knife's edge to a dull throb. Counseling was scheduled. We told ourselves we'd talk openly, no matter how uncomfortable. We'd address all the cracks and see if the foundation was salvageable. The first session was brutal. Raw confessions, tears, a tangled mess of blame. I left feeling bruised, but also strangely lighter, like we'd started cleaning out a wound. Will I ever fully trust her again? I don't know. Part of me doubts it. But I still love her. In some deep, inexplicable way, I always have. When I look at her, I see not just the woman who hurt me, but the girl who once kissed me under that pine tree by the lake, who carved our initials in the bark, who laughed with me at dawn. At the end of it all, maybe that's what's left. A love that's battered and tested, but not wholly extinguished. I can't predict our future. Maybe in a year, we'll realize this can't work, and we'll go our separate ways. Or maybe we'll rebuild, older and wiser, forging a new kind of relationship from the ashes of betrayal. For now, I sleep in the main bedroom again, though it's a tentative arrangement. Sometimes, in the middle of the night, I reach out and feel her hand. That's when the sting of heartbreak mixes with a faint sense of comfort. The proof is gone, burned in the fire pit, but the memory is mine forever. Perhaps the memory is punishment enough. So, to you, my wife, the woman I once trusted above all else, I write these words in my mind like a letter you will never read. I remember the day you said, "I do not owe you an explanation." And maybe you believed it then. But your secrets have been laid bare, and I have chosen, at least for now, not to reveal them to the world. That is my choice, as much a gift to our daughter, as it is an act of mercy for you. Perhaps it's also a gift to myself, a chance to let go of revenge, because it's a poison that would have devoured me from the inside. I hope it's the right decision. Time will tell. But as you once said, if you feel cornered, find a new door. I suppose this is the door I've chosen, a door that leads neither to easy forgiveness nor blind hatred, but something in between, a difficult path we must walk with eyes open. And if we cannot walk it together, then at least we will have tried. That is all that remains now. Our final act is not a story of neat resolutions. It is simply the next chapter, unwritten, uncertain, but undeniably ours.